Welcome the anointed ones. Careful who you crucify. They might resurrect with receipts. You ever notice how the loudest mouths in the room are rarely the ones telling the truth? And how the people who spend the most time talking about you don't seem to be doing much with their own lives? Well, buckle up, because what was meant to ruin you just became your red carpet. Here's a cold, hard fact. According to social psychology research, people are more likely to believe gossip about someone they envy than someone they don't even know. Translation: the more obsessed they were with dragging your name through the dirt, the more it revealed how deeply they wished they were you. They called you fake, dramatic, dangerous, manipulative, all while rehearsing your every move like understudies in a play they'll never get cast in. The irony? The gossip they spread was supposed to end your influence, but instead it highlighted it. Now here's the plot twist they didn't see coming. People are waking up. They're starting to realize, wait, if they really hated this person so much, why are they so obsessed? And guess what? The audience is flipping the script. The gossipers are being left behind like expired tea bags, and you're being celebrated, not just because you survived it, but because you did it without losing your mind, your mouth, or your magic. Let's talk about it. Number one, the gossip was a spotlight in disguise. It gave you free publicity without a marketing budget. They thought gossip would ruin you. They thought if they talked enough trash behind your back, it would spread like wildfire and turn everyone against you, but instead it did something wild. It made people curious about you. Your name started floating around in rooms you hadn't even entered. People started asking, who is this person they can't stop talking about? So they watched, quietly, secretly. And when they did, they didn't see the monster the haters were trying to describe. They saw someone unbothered, focused, graceful, and real. In a way, they handed you free advertising. You didn't pay for attention. You didn't campaign for approval. They gave you both while trying to destroy you. Every insult became a trailer to your greatness. Every lie they told became a doorway people walked through just to find out who you really were. And when they saw the truth, most of them stayed. See, when gossip doesn't match reality, it creates a crack in the illusion. And once people realize they've been lied to, they don't just stop listening to the gossiper. They start questioning everything that person ever said. The ones who tried to use your name for drama didn't understand that the truth always leaks out. And now, people are ditching them because they see the pattern, they see the jealousy, the desperation, the way those people need someone to talk about in order to feel relevant. And they're tired of it. Meanwhile, you never had to say a word. Your actions, your consistency, your peace, all of it spoke louder than any defense you could have made. People realized you didn't need to prove yourself. You let the gossip burn itself out while you kept growing. You didn't just survive it, you flipped it. Now you're the one being celebrated, not because you fought for it, but because you were chosen for it. And that's the part they'll never understand, that the more they tried to tear you down, the higher you climbed and the louder the applause got. All thanks to the same gossip they swore would destroy you. Number two, the universe let them talk so you'd know who was weak enough to believe it. The gossip wasn't just noise, it was a test, a spiritual one, and the people who entertained it, believed it, or even stayed silent while it spread. They unknowingly revealed where their loyalty truly stood. That gossip was never just about your name being dragged. It was about seeing who was weak enough to believe it, who was fake enough to repeat it, and who was real enough to stand beside you even when your reputation was under attack. It separated the loyal from the opportunistic. People always say they support you until support becomes inconvenient, until believing in you comes with a cost. That's when you find out who was with you out of love and who was with you because it was easy. And that gossip storm, it made the lines clear. It exposed those who clapped in your face but listened to lies behind your back. It revealed the ones who claimed to care about you but couldn't wait to pass on rumors like a hot potato. It showed who needed your downfall to feel better about their lack of growth. Some people didn't even need evidence. They heard one twisted version of a story and ran with it. That wasn't about you, that was about them. About how little it took for them to flip. About how eager they were to watch you fall just so they could feel taller. And that's the blessing hidden inside all that mess. You didn't lose anyone who was truly for you. You lost the ones who only clapped when it served them. That's why the gossip was allowed to happen. Not to break you, but to expose what was hidden in plain sight. The universe needed to show you who couldn't go any further with you. Some of those friends were never built for the version of you that's rising now. And the truth is, if that gossip didn't happen, you might have kept trusting people who were secretly rooting for your collapse. So, the smear campaign, it was a divine filter. It hurt, but it cleaned your circle. And now what's left around you is real, solid, tested, and that's something no lie could ever destroy. Number 3, your consistency outlived their performance. Gossip has a short shelf life. It burns hot, fast, and then fizzles out. But consistency, that's what people remember. The ones who tried to ruin your name were relying on shock value. They threw everything they could at your reputation, hoping something would stick. Lies, exaggerations, twisted stories, it was all a show. But here's the thing about performances. Eventually the curtains close, the audience goes home, and the truth is still standing. You didn't match their chaos. You didn't scramble to clear your name. You just kept being you, day after day, moment after moment, and that's what exposed them. People paid attention. They may not have said anything out loud, but they were watching. They saw how you never flinched, how you didn't lower yourself to their level, how you stayed focused when your name was being tossed around like cheap gossip at a lunch table. They saw how your energy didn't shift, how your character didn't crack, how your path didn't bend just because your name was under fire. That's what made them start questioning the narrative. Anyone can put on a performance, that's easy. But staying solid when your name is under attack? That takes strength, that takes alignment. And that's what you showed them. Not through words, but through your walk. While the gossipers were busy switching up, changing stories, contradicting themselves, you were just doing what you've always done, living in truth. And that truth outlived the lies. Eventually, people get tired of drama. They start looking for patterns, and your consistency became your proof. The haters didn't realize that every time they lied, they gave you another chance to rise, another chance to let your integrity speak for itself. You didn't need a defense. You were the defense. Your character was the evidence. Now, the same people who once believed the noise are coming to their own conclusions. They're realizing the drama was temporary, but your spirit is the real deal. And that's what wins in the long run. Not who shouts the loudest, but who walks the straightest when everything's trying to knock them off course. You didn't outtalk them. You outlasted them. Number 4, people realized, wait, why are they so obsessed with you? They didn't mean to, but they exposed themselves. The ones who gossiped about you non-stop thought they were controlling the narrative. They thought if they kept your name in their mouth long enough, people would side with them. But what they didn't count on was how obvious their obsession would become. After a while, it stopped looking like concern or warning or opinion. It started looking like pure, bitter envy. People began to ask the question the haters feared the most: why are they so pressed about this person? Because when someone can't stop bringing you up, even when you're nowhere around, it makes others wonder what the real story is. And that's when the shift happened. People started watching you for themselves, quietly, carefully. And what they found didn't line up with the hate campaign. It was the opposite. They saw someone who wasn't bitter, wasn't messy, wasn't even responding. Just someone growing, glowing, and minding their business. That's when people realized this ain't normal. Why were they making you the center of every conversation? Why did your name trigger such strong reactions? Why were they monitoring you like a full-time job while you weren't even checking for them? Suddenly the gossip stopped making you look guilty and started making your haters look unhinged. The truth is, obsession reveals what insecurity hides. They couldn't match your energy, so they tried to control the way people saw you. But their obsession gave them away. It started to look like jealousy, like they wanted your position, your energy, your peace, but didn't know how to get it, so they tried to ruin it. And when people saw that, they began to detach. The gossipers lost credibility. The audience turned away. Because when you talk about someone 24/7, it starts to look like you're the problem. And in your case, they didn't just overdo it. They exposed themselves as fans in disguise. And number 5, you were the mirror. They couldn't shatter. You weren't the villain in their story. You were the mirror. And that's why they hated you so loudly. Your strength, your discipline, your peace. It reminded them of everything they were avoiding in themselves. You didn't have to say a word. Just by existing the way you do, you made them feel exposed. You made them confront the parts of themselves they were too afraid to fix. That's why they had to attack you. It wasn't about you at all. It was about how they felt in your presence. Small, unmotivated, fake, unstable. You were the reflection they couldn't escape. When people aren't ready to grow, they'll go to war with anything that reveals their stagnation. Instead of taking accountability, they throw dirt on the people who shine without permission. They'll mock your peace while secretly craving it. They'll call your confidence arrogance, your solitude weird, your boundaries attitude. But deep down, they wish they had your self-control. Your light showed them their darkness, and they panicked. That's why the gossip wasn't even rooted in truth. It was projection, plain and simple. They couldn't fix themselves, so they tried to damage you. They hoped that by tearing you down, they'd feel taller. But tearing down a mirror doesn't make your reflection disappear. It just leaves shattered glass. And they ended up bleeding on their own lies. What they didn't understand is that truth doesn't need approval to stand. It doesn't need defending. Truth just is, and you stood in it. Every day they lied on your name, you became stronger. Every attempt to dim your light just made people look harder to see what the fuss was about. And what did they find? Someone real, someone flawed but authentic, someone the lies couldn't touch. They couldn't shatter you because you weren't built on ego, you were built on purpose. And purpose can't be destroyed by projection. The truth kept multiplying. People kept waking up. And now their attacks look like desperation. While you're still standing, clear, solid, unmoved. The mirror didn't crack. It revealed. Number 6, their lies aged poorly, but your integrity became a legacy. At first, their lies felt loud, sharp, convincing even. People heard the gossip and some bought into it because drama always sells fast. But time doesn't just expose lies. It erodes them, slowly, steadily, like water wearing down stone. And while the noise around you faded, your truth stayed solid. You didn't rush to defend yourself. You didn't retaliate with more chaos. You just kept showing up, consistently, quietly, with your head high and your hands clean. That's what people remember. The thing about lies is they age badly. They start to crack under the weight of reality. Details don't line up. Stories change. People forget what they said and who they said it to. The truth, on the other hand, doesn't need adjustments. It just lives. And because you stayed in alignment with who you are, your character had room to speak for itself. Over time, your integrity became louder than their accusations. People started to notice. They remembered what was said about you, but then they watched how you moved, and it didn't match. No hidden agenda, no bitterness, just growth, peace, purpose. That contrast alone made people start questioning everything. Not just the lies, but why they were told in the first place. That's when people started walking away from the gossipers. They saw the insecurity behind the stories. They saw the envy underneath the performance. What you've built now, it's not just a reputation, it's a legacy, the kind that can't be faked or fabricated. You didn't just survive the smear campaign, you transcended it. You turned their accusations into a backdrop that made your truth shine even brighter. While their lies are collecting dust, your integrity is collecting respect. You were never the villain. You were the proof that growth, discipline, and authenticity are still possible, even when people try to bury you in confusion. And that's why people are choosing you now. Because while the haters were busy trying to destroy your name, you were quietly becoming unforgettable. Number 7, the real ones investigated. They found a giant among ants. Not everyone fell for the noise. The loud gossip may have swayed the surface-level thinkers, the ones who love drama more than truth. But the real ones, the observers, the deep thinkers who don't jump to conclusions, they weren't so quick to believe the hype. They sat back, watched everything unfold, and studied you. They weren't moved by volume, they were moved by consistency, and what they found wasn't anything like what was being said. They expected mess, dysfunction, maybe even arrogance. But instead, they saw composure. While your name was getting tossed around like a game of telephone, you didn't spiral. You didn't lash out. You didn't even flinch. You stayed grounded, moved with purpose. Spoke less, but said more through how you carried yourself. And that's when it clicked for them. The gossip wasn't a reflection of your flaws. It was a reflection of your power. Real ones noticed the difference between attention-seeking noise and authentic strength. They realized that the people trying to tarnish your image were scrambling, insecure, loud, and out of control. Meanwhile, you were calm collected, even graceful in the chaos. That kind of poise doesn't come from someone hiding something. It comes from someone anchored. They saw through the smear campaign because they weren't just listening, they were analyzing. And when they put the pieces together, it became clear you weren't the threat they claimed. You were the truth they couldn't handle. A giant among ants, a force too big to be boxed into their small, bitter narratives. And these quiet observers didn't just disagree with the gossip. They started standing up for you in ways you'll never even hear about. Conversations you weren't in, rooms you've never walked into. Your name was being defended. Not because you asked, but because the truth spoke for itself. They became your silent witnesses, the ones who saw through the fog and recognized greatness beneath the noise. So while the gossipers talked themselves in circles, the real ones investigated. And what they found didn't scare them. It inspired them. Because once people see a giant, they can't unsee it. Number 8, they weaponized insecurity. You embodied grace. They thought they were clever, using gossip like a dagger, quiet enough to avoid accountability, sharp enough to cause damage. But gossip is the weapon of the insecure. It only works when the target is fragile, when the person being talked about needs approval to survive. But you never operated like that. You didn't need applause to feel valid. You didn't need to fight back to prove you were right. You let the whispers fly, let the lies stack up, and didn't even break your stride. That's not weakness, that's grace. And grace is dangerous in the face of petty attacks. They wanted a reaction. They needed it. Their entire strategy depended on you cracking, losing control, showing the world you were just as messy as the image they were painting. But you didn't give it to them. You stayed calm, sharp, focused. You gave no viral meltdown, no dramatic clapbacks. Instead, you gave them silence they couldn't decode, a kind of peace that screamed louder than any rumor, and that's what scared them the most. See, when you respond with grace instead of chaos, you strip the gossip of its power. The narrative collapses because you're not feeding it, and slowly people start to notice. They see someone being lied on and slandered, yet still rising, still building, still glowing, and they begin to ask, wait, who's really the problem here? While they used gossip to shrink you, you used grace to outgrow them. They threw stones hoping you'd shatter, but your soul isn't made of glass. You're built from something sacred. That's why their tactics didn't stick. That's why even when your name was surrounded by smoke, your path stayed clear. And now, the same wind that carried their lies is shifting. It's blowing that smoke away. People are starting to see. The truth is revealing itself without you lifting a single finger. The throne they tried to hide is becoming visible. And there you are, still standing, still rising, still unbothered, because you never needed to fight for a crown you were born to wear. Number 9, you're being celebrated now because people saw you go through fire without turning to ash. You didn't beg for sympathy. You didn't post cryptic messages or try to clap back every time someone dragged your name through the mud. You kept it moving, kept it quiet, kept it dignified. That silence wasn't weakness. It was strength under pressure. And the people watching, they saw it. Maybe not all at once, maybe not loudly, but over time they noticed. They saw you walk through fire and they realized something rare. You didn't burn, you refined. That's why you're being celebrated now. Not because life was easy, or because you had some overnight comeback moment with flashing lights and applause. It's because you endured what most people would have crumbled under. And you did it without becoming bitter, without turning vengeful, without losing your authenticity. That's not just survival, that's transformation. That's why people are drawn to you now. They can feel it. Your presence carries a weight, a calm, a kind of power that can't be faked. You've earned every bit of it in silence. You didn't wait for public validation. You didn't need people to rally behind you in the thick of the mess. You just kept growing in the dark, while your name was being dragged in rooms you'd never been in. And now the same people who once doubted you, ignored you, or judged you off rumors, they're realizing they got it wrong. Not because you changed your story to please them, but because your life revealed the truth. People love redemption arcs, sure, but what captivates them more is resilience, especially the kind that doesn't scream for attention. You didn't ask to be celebrated. Your consistency demanded it. You showed people what it looks like to go through hell and still walk out whole. No dramatics, no victim mentality, just silent battles and loud results. That's why you're unforgettable, because you proved that you don't need to explain yourself to rise. You just need to endure the fire without letting it change your essence. And now you're not just being noticed, you're being honored. Because real ones recognize real resilience, and they know it when they see it. Number 10, they tried to socially exile you, but accidentally gave you divine isolation. They thought pushing you out would break you. That if they isolated you, cut you off from support, and poisoned people against you, you'd crumble. That you'd come crawling back for approval or validation. But what they didn't realize is that solitude doesn't destroy the chosen. It refines them. The so-called exile they crafted wasn't your downfall. It was the beginning of your divine isolation. And that was their biggest miscalculation. When the noise died down and the fake connections disappeared, you were left in silence. And for most people, silence is scary, but for you, it became sacred. You finally had space to hear yourself clearly, away from the manipulation and distractions. You were no longer performing. You were no longer shrinking. You were no longer catering to energy that didn't nourish you. And in that emptiness, you met your fullness. You didn't just survive being shut out, you evolved. The version of you that existed before the exile couldn't have handled the level you're at now. That old version was still attached to people-pleasing, still hoping people would see the real you. But isolation cured that. It forced you to see yourself. And in doing that, you found the clarity, the discipline, and the power they never expected you to uncover. They didn't exile you, they freed you. They removed the noise so your purpose could speak. They tried to cut you off socially, but they accidentally handed you the keys to spiritual elevation. And now you've outgrown every narrative they tried to bind you with. You're unrecognizable now, not because you changed to prove them wrong, but because you finally had space to become who you were always meant to be. They were trying to cancel you, but God was calling you. That isolation, it wasn't punishment, it was protection. While they were busy gossiping and forming circles you were never meant to be part of, you were leveling up in silence, building, healing, becoming, and now they don't even recognize you. Not because you're hiding, but because your growth outpaced their perception. The divine isolation they orchestrated to shame you became your sanctuary, and now you walk like someone who's been alone with destiny, because you have. Number 11, your stillness was louder than their circus. They expected you to snap, to scream, to spiral. They wanted chaos, because that's how they operate. They create drama, stir confusion, and wait for a reaction they can twist into proof. But you gave them nothing, just stillness. The kind of stillness that isn't passive, it's intentional. The kind that says, I know who I am. I don't need to prove anything to people playing games I've already outgrown. Your calm didn't come from weakness, it came from depth. And that's what shook them. While they were putting on a circus, performing fake outrage, manufacturing drama, gathering audiences to feed their egos, you didn't even blink. You weren't hiding, you were anchored, and that scared them more than if you'd screamed back because they could feel it. Your silence wasn't emptiness, it was power under control. That kind of stillness isn't normal. It comes from surviving real storms, not petty gossip. From walking through fire and coming out cleaner. So while they danced around trying to destroy your image, your energy did the talking. You didn't need to defend your name in every room it was dragged through. You let truth do what it always does. Rise. They didn't understand how you could stay so composed. But that's because they've never met peace that comes from God, from alignment, from knowing that no weapon formed can prosper, not even a weapon made out of words. They underestimated the weight of your stillness, but it wasn't empty space, it was a shield, it was a statement, and deep down it disturbed them, because their circus needed attention. And you robbed them of that. You didn't attend the show, you didn't play the part, you didn't feed the flames, and when you didn't react, the spotlight turned back on them, exposing how desperate, loud, and lost they really were. Your stillness wasn't silence, it was strategy, it was sacred. And in the end, it echoed louder than all their noise. Because power that doesn't have to perform, that's the kind of power that can't be touched. Number 12, they didn't know you had spiritual protection. Their words boomeranged. They thought their words were just whispers in private rooms, jokes passed around in texts, or little digs dressed as concern. What they didn't realize is that speaking evil over someone who's spiritually protected is like spitting in the wind. It always comes back harder. They thought they were planting seeds of destruction, but they were digging their own graves. Because when someone is covered, chosen, and divinely aligned, gossip doesn't just fall flat. It backfires. You weren't walking around throwing curses. You didn't have to. You were simply aligned with a higher order that operates on justice, not noise. Every insult they flung, every false narrative they crafted, every smear they tried to pin on you, it didn't disappear. It boomeranged, and it hit them harder than they could have imagined. Because spiritual law doesn't forget. It may wait in silence, but when it moves publicly. You didn't lift a finger, and yet the people who tried to ruin you are now watching their own circles collapse, their credibility unravel, and their energy drain. That's not coincidence. That's consequence. They didn't know your name was wrapped in divine protection. They didn't know that you were assigned, not just surviving. They thought they were attacking a person, but they were provoking purpose. And the fallout isn't subtle anymore. People are starting to see it. It's not just karma, it's spiritual law settling accounts. And the funny thing is, they were loud when they were tearing you down, but they're quiet now that it's catching up to them. They thought they were casting shadows over you, but they ended up standing in the dark themselves. Meanwhile, you're walking in more light than ever, not because you fought them, but because you refused to lower yourself. You didn't need revenge, you had reverence. And the power that covers you saw everything. The mockery, the deception, the betrayal, all of it was logged. And now, the bill is due. They didn't know who they were messing with, but they know now. Number 13, your reputation wasn't defended, it was revealed. You never begged anyone to see you correctly. You never argued your case or tried to rewrite the rumors. While they were busy assassinating your character behind your back, you were focused on living right in front of their faces. You didn't chase your reputation, you lived your truth. And now it's not defense that's clearing your name, it's evidence. There's something unshakable about a person who keeps showing up with integrity. You didn't have to convince anyone of your worth. You just kept walking in it. The people who were supposed to believe the lies eventually got confused. The image they painted of you didn't match the energy you carried. The stories didn't line up with your behavior. You didn't clap back, spiral, or act out. You stayed consistent. And that's what broke the illusion. The thing about fruit is it can't be faked for long. People watched you move and they noticed. Your life wasn't chaotic, your spirit wasn't toxic, your energy wasn't manipulative. You were growing, building, healing, while your enemies were busy planting weeds. And now that the harvest season is here, the difference is undeniable. Your results speak louder than their accusations. What you didn't say, life confirmed. The truth had time on its side. And while they rushed to poison your name, the clock quietly exposed them. People who once bought into the gossip are now asking themselves, why does this person they hated so much walk with so much peace, grace, and favor? Because lies can make noise, but they can't produce fruit. Your reputation was never in your hands to protect. It was in your walk to prove. And you walked it even when it hurt, even when you were misunderstood, even when it was lonely. That's why you're being celebrated now. Not because you fought for people's opinions, but because you stayed true to your essence. And that's what the wise ones saw, not just what was said about you, but what bloomed from you. They know the difference now, because the gossip faded, but your growth didn't. Number 14, the gossip gave you something priceless, a platform built on proof. The gossip was meant to destroy you, but all it did was spotlight you. What they didn't expect was that while they were busy talking, you were busy becoming. They thought dragging your name through the mud would make people turn on you. But the mud didn't stick because you had something they didn't, substance. And now people see it. You didn't argue back. You didn't run around trying to control the narrative. You let your actions, your consistency, and your growth tell the truth louder than any defense ever could. Over time, the dust settled and the lies fell apart. What was left standing? You, unshaken, elevated, and glowing from the inside out. Not because you were loud, but because you were rooted. And that glow, it's what's making people stop, rethink, and say, wait, how did they survive all of that and still come out with power in their eyes? Now you've got something they can't buy, fake, or replicate. Credibility forged in adversity. When you speak, people pay attention, because your words aren't theory, they're lived. Every sentence carries weight because they watched you walk through betrayal, rejection, and defamation without losing your soul. That kind of authority, it can't be manufactured. It's earned. The irony is painful and poetic. The same people who tried to tear you down gave you the greatest gift, a platform built on proof. Their gossip drove eyes to your story, and your story outshined the slander. They tried to cancel you, but all they did was broadcast your grace to a wider audience. They tried to bury a prophet, not realizing the seed always breaks open underground. Now their mouths are quiet, not because they've changed, but because they've been outshined. And the people who once hesitated to support you, they're now clapping from the sidelines because your resilience woke them up. You didn't just rise, you rose right in front of them, and the proof is undeniable. They gave you dirt, but you grew a kingdom out of it, and now when you speak, even your former doubters lean in, because real always recognizes real. In the end, every lie, every whisper, every attempt to shame you only served as a stepping stone toward your public confirmation. What they meant for sabotage became divine setup. Their gossip was never stronger than your grace. And now the same energy they used to mock you is circling back with silence, regret, and revelation. The truth has always had your back. It just needed time to mature. While they were loud, you were growing in silence. While they were scheming, you were aligning. And while they were throwing dirt, you were becoming the version of yourself that could no longer be ignored. You didn't retaliate, you transformed. And that transformation is why your name is being redeemed without your hands ever needing to touch the battlefield. What makes your victory so potent is not just that you rose, it's that you rose without bitterness. You didn't just prove them wrong, you proved yourself right. You didn't beg for a seat at their tables, you built your own. And now people are watching you feast in the very place they said you'd fail. The whispers are gone, the show has ended, the masks have slipped. And what's left? A story that outlived the rumors. Yours, a legacy stitched with resilience, grace, and truth. The stage they tried to humiliate you on has become your platform. And the spotlight? It's finally where it belongs. You weren't just vindicated, you were revealed. And now, let them talk if they dare. Because everyone can see clearly now, you were never the problem, you were the prophecy. If this message spoke to your soul, if it made something deep in you feel seen, heard, and understood, then this space was made for you. Don't just watch and scroll, connect. Hit that subscribe button and become part of a community that gets it. Tap like if you've ever been through something similar and made it out stronger. Drop a comment below and let us know your story. Your voice matters here. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with someone who's been battling gossip, false narratives, or silent warfare. Someone who needs to know that their name will be redeemed without lifting a finger. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you're definitely not defeated. Welcome home. God bless you.